Soldier, wake up. Bloody helmets.
There's an account in the first book of Samuel before the kings come on the scene. And of course, there were many skirmishes between the Philistines and the Israelites. And I love this account, 1 Samuel chapter 4. Depending on the version you're using, it could be 1 Kings. Now Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped at Aphek. The Philistines drew up in a line against Israel, and when battle spread, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who slew about 4,000 men on the field of battle. And when the troops came into the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord put us to rout today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that he may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from them there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the cherubim. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout, so that the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they had learned the ark of the Lord had come into the camp, the Philistines were afraid. For they said, "A god has come into their camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods? These are the gods who smote the Egyptians with every sort of plague in the wilderness. Take courage and behave like men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews as they have been to you. Behave yourselves like men and fight." So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated. And they fled every man to his own home. And there was a great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. And the ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. This is the story of today's church, gentlemen. Not the story of 4,000 years ago. It's a story of today's church, that despite that we have the ark with us here, present in this room, the fullness of divine presence. You have the priesthood, which gives you all these channels of grace you're so hoping to receive from birth to death. And the church is being smoked. We're being defeated. We believe we have the true faith. But you see what's happening? Your enemies out there, they're mustering up their courage, and they're fighting manfully, garnering all of their forces, weapons, and they're crushing us. Because they are fighting manfully, and we are not. The real man that you want to become is someone who is secure in himself, self-possessed, can face himself in all his inadequacies. You want to be somebody that someone can turn to be a source of strength. You want to be a man who can face himself alone, to stand up to other men, one who can lead calmly and judiciously, one who is strong in those abilities, as Mark was talking about, to lead, protect, and provide, all those in your care, one who is ready and one who has peace with laying down his life. And that is the outline for today's conference. The difficulty is, the primary reason you have not reached these things you are looking for, it's not a faith issue here. The reason men are being troubled in their faith and their own home life and their own masculine identity is because they have not been mentored and guided the way they should have by their fathers first and other men in their care and periphery. It's just that simple. You know, the tragedy is, I think, not so much that men aren't living authentic masculinity. The tragedy is we don't even know what it is. And I'm still trying to figure out a lot of these things myself. You know, the church has said a lot about the role and the dignity of woman. John Paul II even wrote a letter on it. Cardinal Ratzinger, at the end of May 31st, 2004, he wrote a text issued through the Pontifical Council the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, on the collaboration of men and women in ministry and in the world. And he does a great job going with a certain theological background of theology of the body and whatnot, and the duty that we must do to take up our roles in the church. And then he speaks about women at the end of the document and their role and their place and their capacities. But he doesn't write about men. And so how are we supposed to fulfill this wish he had for us on the collaboration of men and women in ministry in the world when he hasn't told us about our capacities? A lot of writers don't want to tackle this, and neither does the church. Now, there's no question there's a lot of confusion out there on gender differentiation, a lot of feminizing influences. We're going to go through some of these. But worse than all of this, we can't be blaming the TV and the media and even the church. This duty of your identity in yourself, in your own gender, in your own masculinity, and your identity and your spirituality should be fundamentally trained through your father and other mentors that you have in your course of life. That's where you get that instruction. And so again, gentlemen, that's why you're not there. And it's because that whole project of forming the man has been lost today. And because the nuclear family, that extended family that used to be cohabitating together and bonded, your grandfathers, your uncles, and many other associates working on certain projects, working together in a communal situation that, as you know, is all fallen apart. And so men learned that natural mentoring through that in-home experience, through that domestic experience. But that's no more. And so we have to be very creative now on how to rebuild this sense or this project of forming our boys. Because your boys and your grandsons are being formed like women today in their various educational and formation experiences. We're going to get to those. Again, the title for this conference, Quest for Masculine Spirituality. By nature, you want to be a spiritual leader of your wife and your kids. And yes, to a certain extent, of those in your community. But leading women spiritually, as you know, can be a little bit difficult. And this is awkward for most men. Not only that you've learned in kind of a feminine modality of your faith, but women are very different, and they worship different, and they pray differently. They think differently about the faith. And so it's otherwise very hard to lead them unless you not only have your own integration set with the faith, but also really understand hers and how she works. Your worship, your faith, faith life, your prayer. Many of your influences have been very effeminate, and you haven't been led in these areas. And this is why men are not coming to church or to Mass. Because their masculine identity is not being fed. I really believe that. 4 out of 5 Christian boys, Christian denominations and Catholic, 4 out of 5 during their college years will leave their faith. 4 out of 5. My question is there a minister or is there a priest feeding their masculinity? You know, when you're in college, you're working on a certain project of trying to establish yourself in life, seeking your own identity and a career, and trying to form and forge something for yourself. Yeah, you need some masculine influences when you're in college to lead you, to guide you, to make you feel more secure about that project. But that's not happening in the churches. These boys who need some masculine leaders aren't finding them in their ministers. And so they're not finding, as I would say, human reasons to be engaged in their churches anymore. And so they're leaving. Can you blame them if that genuine masculinity really isn't being fed?
We hope you enjoyed this recording of Dr. Phil Chavez, founder of the Men's Academy. To find out more about our training and resources on Christian manliness, visit www.themensacademy.org. Thank you.